This video will talk through solving an absolute value equation. I think the basic, simplest rule to remember: you can't solve it until you've isolated the absolute value expression within the equation. And to do that, you would use the same logic, the same skill set that you would use if you were isolating a variable. And then you will break it into two separate equations to solve, and we'll have a more extensive unit on that later in the year. And breaking into two separate equations is actually called bifurcation. It has a name. And then you would present your final answer using set notation with the braces. And then remember two basic facts about absolute value. It's always positive, and it's just simply measuring distance on a number line from 0. So if I had a variable n and a variable negative n, I would have two values equidistant from 0. Do something simple like number 46, basic example. To isolate the absolute value of y, I would just simply add 2 to both sides, and then I would have the absolute value of y equaling positive 10. And then I could just think of that as y equaling positive 10, or y could also equal negative 10. So a number line representation, going back to simple grade school. And then I would like to see you present your answer in set notation with the braces. And since I'm referring to 10 as both positive and negative, I can use this notation where I place the addition and the subtraction symbol on top of each other. So this is implied that I'm referring to both positive and negative 10. Let's look at an example like number 50. So here, to isolate the absolute value of x, I would have to add positive 2 to both sides. So the absolute value of x would equal positive 6. And then my solution set would be positive and negative 6. Because remember, the absolute value of negative 6 would also be positive 6. Let's look at a problem like number 56. Let's do a problem like number 56. So the first thing that I'm going to do is move the 4 to the other side. So then I'm going to be left with this. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. But then I notice that I have the negative sign sitting in front of the parentheses. So I could either distribute that through, or I could think of this as a negative 1 outside of the parentheses. And I could divide the negative 1 away from both sides, and if I did that, then my end result would be this. That would make the 2 on the other side now positive. So I had negative 2, I've now switched the sign. And then I would subtract 2 from both sides, so then I would be left with this. 2 minus 2 is 0, and if I divide both sides by negative 1, then I'm left with this. The absolute value of n is 0, and that would really only have one member in its solution set, the number 0 itself. So that's number 56, and let's do one more on the video. I think you probably get the idea by now. Let's do number 58 on the video. And the first thing I'm going to do is move the 9, subtract 9 from both sides. And then I'm going to have this. 4 minus 9 is negative 5. Then I will apply the same logic that I did in the last problem. I can think of the negative sign sitting right here as a negative 1. And I'll just recopy it so it's clear. If I were to divide both sides by the blue negative 1, then I would have this left. Dividing by the blue negative 1 makes the negative 5 positive. And now, to carry on to isolate the absolute value, I would have the absolute value of x, and if I add negative 7 to both sides, I would have the absolute value of x equaling negative 2, and I would have to say that there's no solution to that, because one of the basic premises for absolute value is that the answer must be positive. So that would have no solution. And I feel like you can probably take the rest on your own.